Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, a Roman conqueror and an Egyptian queen. Their love defied politics, power, and the greatest empire on earth. For centuries, Rome tried to erase their story, but their love changed the world. History remembers Julius Caesar and Cleopatra as lovers wrapped in gold and scandal, but their story began in blood, politics, and desperation. Julius Caesar was 52, a soldier of logic and ambition, fresh from civil war. Cleopatra was 21, exiled, hunted, and determined to take back her throne. What united them wasn't lust, it was need and a dangerous fascination that neither could control. Their affair would give birth to a son, ignite Rome's fury, and rewrite the balance of power across the ancient world. This is the story of how passion and politics collided on the banks of the Nile. The year is 48 BC. Caesar arrives in Alexandria with a small army, chasing his rival Pompey. He expects tribute, maybe friendship. Instead, a messenger brings him a box. Inside, Pompey's head. The boy King Ptolemy XIII had thought he was helping. He had just murdered Rome's hero to impress Rome's new master. Caesar stares into the box for a long moment, disgust and sorrow wrestling in his eyes. He orders proper burial for Pompey, then turns to the palace. Egypt needs a ruler, and he needs calm. Outside the city walls, Cleopatra waits. She's been driven into the desert by her brother's advisors, living on dried dates and borrowed loyalty. Every night, she studies Rome's war reports by firelight, memorizing the names of Caesar's legions. She knows her only path back to power runs through the man now sleeping in her father's palace. That night, Alexandria whispers with rumor. A carpet is carried into Caesar's chambers, heavy and ornate. When the servants unroll it, Cleopatra steps out, tired, dusty, defiant. Caesar's guards reach for swords. Caesar lifts a hand. For a heartbeat, they just look at each other, the general who conquered Gaul and the girl who would conquer him. She speaks first, in Greek, his second language. No translator, no fear. And that shocks him. Most rulers he meets drown him in flattery. Cleopatra gives him logic. Egypt's famine, her brother's corruption, her plan to fix it. Cleopatra negotiated her return to power entirely without interpreters. She was one of the only monarchs who could talk to Caesar directly. And she does more than talk, she reads him. She knows he hates chaos, values order, and worships intellect. So she gives him all three. By morning, he promises arbitration. By nightfall, he can't stop thinking about her. Caesar, who had outthought every enemy he ever faced, realizes that for the first time, he wants to be understood, not obeyed. When news spreads that Cleopatra has returned, Alexandria explodes. Her brother's army surrounds the palace. Arrows pierce marble columns. Caesar commands his legions to hold the courtyard, while he and Cleopatra plan the defense upstairs. In those weeks under siege, they share everything: meals, maps, letters. She sketches the Nile Delta from memory. He draws the bridges he built in Gaul. Some nights they talk until dawn about fate and stars. Cleopatra teaches Caesar how Egyptians measured time by Sirius, the dog star, planting the idea that will later inspire his reform of the Roman calendar. War becomes intimacy. When the fighting finally ends with the Battle of the Nile, Caesar's reinforcements burn the enemy fleet, and Ptolemy XIII drowns trying to flee. Cleopatra sails beside Caesar as Alexandria smoulders, two victors, two survivors. In the ashes, a legend begins. Morning light spreads over the Nile. The smoke of battle still drifts across the water, but Alexandria belongs to Cleopatra again. Caesar stands beside her on the palace balcony. Below them, crowds cheer. Egypt has a queen once more. For Cleopatra, victory isn't just survival, it's rebirth. She's 22 and the entire kingdom bends to her will. But what she feels as she looks at Caesar isn't power, it's recognition. Here is someone who understands ambition the way she does. Someone who sees in her more than a queen, a mind. That connection, that rare equality, becomes the spark of something neither expected. Weeks pass. Caesar's warships rest in the harbour. His soldiers rebuild roads and warehouses. Cleopatra and Caesar take a brief voyage up the Nile, part diplomacy, part retreat. The trip becomes legend. Gold-decked barges, silk canopies, musicians playing by moonlight. But behind the grandeur, it's surprisingly quiet. They talk more than they touch. Philosophy, politics, fate. Cleopatra shows Caesar the temples of Isis and the ancient tombs of the pharaohs. He listens, amazed. He's spent his life conquering, not understanding, and Egypt feels like the first place he's ever simply existed. Here's a little-known fact. Cleopatra taught Caesar Egyptian astronomy and mathematics firsthand, explaining how the Nile's floods followed the stars. Caesar took notes that would become part of his reform of Rome's chaotic calendar, the one that gives us the leap year. Caesar was fascinated by Egypt's monarchy, especially its balance of religion and authority. He confided to Cleopatra that Rome, too, might need a single, strong ruler. A dangerous thought, but one that would echo all the way to the Ides of March. When they return to Alexandria, Caesar hosts a victory banquet. The room glows with oil lamps, musicians play, and courtiers whisper. It's the first time in months that Cleopatra laughs freely. She's already pregnant, though few realize it. Cleopatra concealed her pregnancy for months, fearing Rome's reaction if news reached the Senate that Julius Caesar had fathered a foreign heir. As the months pass, Caesar oversees Egypt's new administration. He stays longer than any Roman leader before him, almost a year. Rumors reach Rome their general has gone native, bewitched by a queen. Caesar shrugs it off. In private, he tells Cleopatra they think they own the world. Let them see what the world really is to her. It sounds like a prophecy. In 47 BC, Cleopatra gives birth to a son, Ptolemy, 15th Caesar, called Caesarion, Little Caesar. Caesar holds him, and for the first time in years, he smiles without calculation. The child is a symbol, not just of love, but of empire, the blood of Rome and Egypt in one heartbeat. Few know another truth. Caesar recognized the boy privately. He even allowed his name to appear on Egyptian documents beside Caesarion's, a silent acknowledgement no Roman law would ever permit. For Cleopatra, this was destiny fulfilled. Her family had ruled Egypt for generations, but none had tied their line to the greatest power on earth. Now she had. A year later, Caesar must return to Rome. The Senate demands his presence, and his enemies are plotting. He asks Cleopatra to stay in Egypt, but she refuses. She sails to Rome with Caesarion, and the city loses its mind. No foreign queen had ever lived in Rome like that before. She resides in Caesar's villa across the Tiber, surrounded by Egyptian servants, silks, and perfume. Every senator, every gossip, every poet talks about her. Romans were scandalized when Caesar placed a golden statue of Cleopatra in the temple of Venus Genetrix, his family's patron goddess. It was more than affection. It was a statement that divine beauty now had a face, and it wasn't Roman. The elites whisper that Cleopatra wants to be queen of Rome, that Caesar plans to crown her. Julius Caesar brushes off the rumors, but privately they trouble him. For the first time, his two worlds, the order of Rome and the allure of Egypt, are pulling him apart. Rome in 45 BC is a city of contradictions. Temples rise, banners celebrate Caesar's victories, and yet the Senate seethes. Cleopatra moves through it like a living riddle. Her intellect charms philosophers. Her presence terrifies traditionalists. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, remains silent but humiliated. Every public appearance with Cleopatra feeds the fire. Still, Caesar can't let her go. In private, he tells her that Rome is too small for them both. She answers softly, then build something greater. Cleopatra may have secretly married Caesar in the Egyptian rite of Isis, a ceremony unrecognized by Roman law but sacred in Egypt. No record survives, but Roman rumor accused her of calling herself his lawful wife, one of many reasons the Senate came to hate him. Julius Caesar begins to dream bigger. He reforms the calendar, rebuilds cities, expands the Senate, and speaks openly about becoming dictator for life. In private, he talks of uniting Rome and Egypt under one family. He tells Cleopatra, "Our son will inherit a world without borders." She believes him. Caesar had a throne built beside his in the Senate chamber, large enough for two, and it's said he once joked that Cleopatra's son might sit on it one day. To his enemies, that was treason. To Cleopatra, it was destiny. But destiny has enemies. Caesar's growing power frightens the Senate. They whisper about kings, crowns, and the foreign queen who has bewitched him. On March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, they strike. 23 knives flash beneath the marble arches. Rome's ruler falls at the base of Pompey's statue, his blood pooling at the feet of the man whose death had first brought him to Egypt. The Senate chamber is chaos, a swirl of togas, shouts, and blood. Julius Caesar lies motionless beneath the statue of Pompey, his last breath spent staring at men he once called brothers. Outside, the city murmurs, then howls. Word spreads like fire. Caesar is dead. In the villa across the Tiber, Cleopatra holds Caesarion and feels the earth tilt beneath her feet. For a moment, she thinks it's a rumor. Rome breeds those hourly. Then the messengers come. She doesn't scream. She simply orders her ship prepared. By dusk, she's gone. The queen who dazzled Rome vanishes down the river under moonlight. Sails black, torches out. She leaves behind the golden statue in the Temple of Venus, the whispers, the envy. She takes only her son, the living echo of Caesar's blood. Little known fact number 10. Caesar's will made no mention of Cleopatra or Caesarion. Instead, he named his grandnephew Octavian as heir. But Cleopatra believed the will was written before their son's birth. To her, Caesarion was the rightful successor, the child of two worlds. She sails back to Alexandria, not as a lover, but as a widow of empire. For weeks, she doesn't speak in council. When she finally does, it's to declare Egypt's independence once more. Rome may have killed her love, but it would not claim her kingdom. Grief transforms her. She becomes quieter, colder, sharper. Those who knew her say she began to look more like the statues of Isis, serene but unreachable. She spends hours each day in the library, studying medicine and chemistry. She experiments with perfumes, toxins, and antidotes. Later, Greek physicians cite Cleopatra's cosmetics as a medical text. Knowledge becomes her shield against despair. She raises Caesarion in secret chambers, teaching him languages before he can walk. She tells him stories of his father not as a martyr, but as a builder, the man who dreamed of a world without borders. Meanwhile, in Rome, the world shifts again. Caesar's murder doesn't restore the Republic, it shatters it. Octavian rises, claiming to avenge his father. Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general, controls the legions in the east. To Cleopatra, both men are dangerous. Octavian represents the cold machinery of Rome. Antony represents fire, and perhaps a path to survival. She watches from Alexandria as their rivalry grows. Rome is again devouring itself, and Egypt will soon be in its jaws. Yet even in death, Julius Caesar and Cleopatra remain entangled. Their son, Caesarion, is living proof that Rome and Egypt were once united by more than conquest. Cleopatra sends emissaries westward, carrying portraits of Caesarion crowned in gold. subtle propaganda reminding the world that Caesar's bloodline still breathes. When Antony finally summons her years later, she sails north once more on that legendary golden barge. The meeting will ignite another chapter, one of passion, politics, and ultimate ruin. But that is another story. For now, she carries with her the memory of the man who changed everything. In Rome, Octavian orders the removal of Cleopatra's statue from the Temple of Venus. But it's too late. Romans can't stop talking about her. Children play Cleopatra and Caesar in the streets. Poets turn their affair into tragedy and song. Even in hatred, she fascinates them. Caesar's reforms survive him. The calendar, the Senate's new order, the imperial ideal. Yet the thing he cherished most, the idea that power could be humanized by intellect and compassion, dies with him. Only Cleopatra had seen that side of him, only she had matched it. Centuries later, their story becomes myth. The soldier who conquered the world, the queen who conquered him. But strip away the marble and the poetry, and what remains is something startlingly real. They were two leaders standing at the edge of history's greatest transformation. Rome was about to become an empire. Egypt was about to fade into memory. For a brief moment, through love, they bridged the two. Their affair gave the world a child, inspired revolutions of thought, and even changed how time itself was measured. Without Cleopatra's teachings, Caesar's Julian calendar might never have existed. Without Caesar's protection, Egypt might have fallen decades earlier. Together, they delayed the inevitable and made eternity take notice. Picture this. The night before she meets Mark Antony, Cleopatra walks alone through her palace. On a table sits a small marble bust of Julius Caesar, its surface worn smooth from her hands. She touches the scar above his brow, the curve of the jaw, and whispers, "They will remember us." And she's right. 2,000 years later, we still do. Name a love story greater than this one. Go ahead, drop it in the comments. Because if Julius Caesar and Cleopatra don't top your list, I'd love to hear who does.